Hi, I'm Robert Shields, and this is the first of 4 tutorial videos that we're doing with Music Plus, and we're going to look at songwriting. We're going to look at the basics of it and hopefully a few more complicated things that you might not have thought of. Chords are the foundation of your piece. They are what comes usually before you start writing your melody or your lyric. In basic terms, we talk about chords as majors, which are sort of positive, happy sounding chords, your minors, which are more sort of melancholy and sad, and then we speak about modal, which is where major or minor isn't revealed to us yet, and you just use the first, the fifth, and the octave. As you know, there are a number of variations we can have within those chord sequences. You can add sort of sevenths, ninths, and diminished chords and all that kind of thing. For now, we'll just stick to the basic sort of majors and minors to build our pattern. A chord pattern, when you first write it, should be circular in nature, and what we mean by that is that it should sort of repeat on itself fairly effortlessly. There shouldn't be any sort of too violently changing through the gears or big drops at the end of sections. It should all flow quite naturally, and you should really find yourself doing that pretty easily. We're going to start with an example of a chord sequence. We're just going to choose a really sort of basic one that's used a lot in modern sort of contemporary writing. We're going to go from an A minor, F major, C major to G major. One thing you want to avoid doing is the use of sort of clunky, obvious chords. As a piano player, you see it quite often, and it's using that same sort of basic triad shape. So rather than doing this kind of shape, in this instance we could go from the A minor to the F here, and then our C would be here, and our original G. And as you can see, it just sort of keeps everything in the same sort of place, and it makes it a lot smoother sounding in your transitions. Pedals, or a pedal point, is where you have a sort of constant repeating note in the bass, and that can be either the bass of your arrangement or the sort of lower register of your instrument. It's a really cool technique for sort of building anticipation and suspense. It's used a lot in classical music and film scores and things like that. If we use our example of the chord sequence we've had earlier, and we just sit a C in the bass note right underneath it, it'll sound something like this. So an inverted pedal or inverted pedal point is exactly what it sounds like. It's just at the opposite end of the register. So you pick a note and you play that continuously throughout your chord sequence. It's a really cool way to get this feeling of consistency and continuity, and it allows you to build chords where you might not have really considered them before. It's good to experiment with them, you know, pick a note that might even sound quite dissonant. It can allow you a nice feeling of refrain when it comes back to a full chord. Bass note placement is something I'm quite obsessive about. I think it's a really good technique to make your track sound much more professional. I think it's something that in young writers is sometimes overlooked, and continuously using the root note as your bass note is in danger of making your track sound overly simplistic, and moving your bass note to either a third or a fifth can just lend that feeling of professionalism to the whole thing. So if we take that chord sequence that we had earlier as an example, our A minor, F, C and G, that's the same chord progression as an Ellie Goulding track called Burn. And what I really like about that track is the bass note placement. If we look at it again, it goes from A minor so if we do that again, and there's the E under that C, and it gives this sort of unfinished feeling to the chord sequence. It allows it to be a lot more circular. When it goes to the G, it feels like it's continuously moving, and in the few sections throughout the track that it does go to a full C in both the chord and the bass note, it gives this sort of massive feel to it. It's a really, really cool technique, and something you should definitely be looking at doing. Changing the tempo of your track during the writing process can be a really good technique. You might start with a very definite idea of how you want the groove and the rhythm of your track to feel, but changing the tempo up or down can allow you to think differently about how you write your melody and how you key everything together. There are tracks that I've written that started out as sort of 80 BPM tracks and have ended up being a lot faster during the verses and different sections. Never think of your tempo as hard and fast until you've completely finished the track. You can always revert back to the original feel, but sometimes just that change can make you think slightly differently about how you approach different parts of that song. Using an alternative time signature is a good way to create something that sounds really different. You can have a slow waltzy feel, or you could have an angular sort of 7/8 feel. It's just cool to play around with. What I would say about tracks like that is that you should always let the melody lead them. If you create your melody and have something that you're really happy with, then you can try and fit it into a more awkward time signature. Trying to write a melody once you have an awkward time signature can be a little bit hard work. Sometimes a really simple technique, such as adding a beat to the end of your bridge section or taking one away, can make your audience feel a little bit uncomfortable. It can shake them up in the middle of a section, and it's a really cool idea just to keep your track quite different and keep it moving quite well.